Hello, my name is Susanne Starling, and I'm here today interviewing Sue Chenault. I'm going to be talking with Sue about her ancestor, Wesley M. Chenault. Sam Street's map of Dallas County, I'm sure you're familiar with that wonderful map with all the information it has on it, shows the original land grants for the early settlers. And many of those were surveyed by Warren Ferris. And when you look at Sam Street's map, you notice that he and Wesley Chenault were neighbors, but they were close neighbors. And do you think they were also friends as well as neighbors?
I think they became good friends, actually. I know that Wesley was pretty active in the community. And I think that being the age that he was, because he was about 27, 28 years old when he arrived here. And I believe that because of his age and his active lifestyle, that yes, they became good friends. Mm-hmm.
What role did Wes Chenault have in the creation of the Ferris Cemetery?
Actually, I think that it was just an agreement between he and Ferris that they would establish this cemetery, and it was on Ferris's property because most of those that had already passed were buried, I guess, in that area somehow, and he invited Wes to bury Elizabeth there when she died in 1857, and I believe she was the first outside the Ferris family individual to be buried in that plot.
Is Wes Chenault buried in the Ferris Cemetery? His wives are buried there, but...
I believe he is. I believe that Wes Chenault never left Dallas County and that he died sometime after his third marriage in 1870. Sometime between that and possibly 1875, because his third wife by 1880 was shown as a widow on the census records.
Now, Wes came to Texas in 1846 from Indiana.
Yes.
A lot of the other settlers were from Kentucky and Tennessee, but Warren Ferris, of course, was from New York. So that I think they were sort of unusual states, you know, compared to the other settlers. And he came with his younger brother, William.
Yes.
And his wife, Elizabeth Hatfield.
That's right.
And 5 children. Was he a Peters colonist?
Yes, he was. He and William both were. William got half the acreage that Wes got because he was unmarried at the time.
Do you think that Wes, you mentioned that he had a grist mill and he had other business interests. Did he think of himself as a farmer, or did he think of himself more as a businessman?
That's hard to say, except that on the census in 1850, he was listed as a miller. So he had a lot going on, really, as a businessman, because he was farming, he was running that grist mill or a sawmill, whatever it was, and he also was investing in property in what today is downtown Dallas. So I think he had many pursuits.
How are you descended from Wes Chenault? What line?
His 7th born child was Albert George, born in 1851, and he is my great-grandfather. And he had a son named Eugene, who was his 9th child, and that was my grandfather.
Do you have any photographs of some of your older relatives? Is there a photograph of Wes or Lucy?
I have never come across one of Wes, but I do have one for Janetta, his second-born daughter, and I have one of my great-grandfather, Albert George.
Albert George, okay.
It is a picture of him probably in his late 20s, maybe early 30s. Could be a little bit later than that. And then I have one of him with 4 of his sons.
Great. When you think back to those pioneers that came and settled in this area, the Dallas pioneers, how do you picture their life? You know, what comes to your mind about what things were like back in the 1840s and 50s?
Well, after reading many of the stories that were written about other settlers in this area, it's obvious to me they didn't have a lot of the conveniences that we have today, like a grocery store nearby. So it was difficult, not only from the standpoint of getting supplies, but just being safe, you know, from the predators around them, not only, I'm sure, Indians, but wildlife as well.
Yeah. They had to learn to make do with things they could grow and produce for themselves,
Yes.
clothing and all that sort of thing, because it was a long way to the store. You and your brothers, both of your brothers, Jerry and Mickey, have been very active in supporting the Friends of the Warren Ferris Cemetery. And you attended, I know, a number of meetings and fundraisings and so on. How did you learn about this project, and what do you think about it?
Several years ago, probably more than 20, my mom and I, well, it was right after the dedication of the plaque.
Historic mark.
The historic marker. My mom and I visited the cemetery, and we both commented on how it would be great if we could clean it up, you know, but we felt like that as a family, we wanted to pursue this sort of in my mom's memory. And so she would have been really proud that this is happening. And I think we are so appreciative of the restoration and all that has gone on with this effort, because it wasn't something that we could have done on our own. And having this group come together and do this has just been a thrill for us.
Well, we certainly appreciate your support, and part of the mission of the Friends is to honor the memory of those people who are buried in the cemetery. Your family, the Chenault family, has been very successful in organizing, and so few families do that, you know. Families scatter and they don't all stay in touch. How have you, I believe you even have a national organization.
Yes, we have a National Chenault family group, and actually our annual reunions of the family started in Dallas in 1950. One was held here at Fair Park. I've got pictures from it, which I treasure because it has my whole family in it, and I was a little girl and my sister was just a baby sitting on my mom's lap in the picture. But there are several, I would say there's 200 or 300 people there. And so it became an annual event as a reunion first. And then in about 1991, I believe it was, they formed what they called the association and started keeping track of all of the members. And by then, a book had been published of the genealogy in '78. It has over 37,000 descendants. And by now, that probably is close to being doubled by continued research and compilation efforts.
Well, I ask you a lot of these questions because some of our families are not organized, and it looks like a very daunting thing, you know, how do you get started and so on. I think you've given us some good tips. Another one I would ask you, though, is how do you involve the young people? We get interested in genealogy as we're older. How do you get young people to be interested?
That's a good question, and one which we visited a number of times. I think that's where every heritage organization is having a struggle. It starts out with people, though, involving their families and getting them to come and join in. and making it economical enough so that young families can afford to do it. Talking up your heritage with those younger individuals, because that is not an area of interest to them when you're young.
Right. Well, thank you so much, Sue, for all of your information that you have given us and being willing to do the interview.
You're welcome. I enjoyed it.